he'd been beating when he opened his rod in a very tired, leery grin at me. He was not too well shaved for a Roz, and you could fitty patches of dried sweat on his shirt under the arms, and you could get this fawn of earwax from him as he came close. Then he clenched his stinking red rugger and let me have it right in the belly, which was unfair, and all the other Millicents smacked their Gullivers off at that, except the top one, and he kept on with his weary, bored grin. I had to lean against a whitewashed wall so that all the white got onto my platties, trying to drag the old breath back and in great agony. And then I wanted to suck up the gluey pie I'd had before the start of the evening, but I couldn't stand that sort of vesh sicking all over the floor, so I held it back. Then I saw this fatty bruise boy was turning to his Millicent droogs to have a real horror show smack at what he'd done. So I raised my right noga, and before they could screech at him to watch out, I'd kicked him smart and levelly on the shin, and he screeched murder, hopping around. But after that, they all had a turn, bouncing me from one to the other like some very weary bloody ball. Oh, my brothers, and fisting at me in the yorbles and the rot and the belly, and dealing out kicks, and then at last I had to sit up on the floor and, like some real bazoomy veg, I even said, "Sorry, brothers, that was not the right thing at all. Sorry, sorry, sorry." But they handed me story bits of Gazetta and made me wipe it. Then they made me make with the sawdust. And then they said, almost like dear old droogs, that I was to sit down and we'd all have a quiet, go for it. And then P.R. Deltoid came in to have a viddy, his office being in the same building, looking very tired and grasny to say. So it's happened, Alex boy, yes. Just as I thought it would. Dear, 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 yes. Then he turned to the Millicents to say, "Evening, Inspector. Evening, Sergeant. Evening, evening all. Well, this is the end of the line for me, yes. Dear, dear, this boy does look messy, doesn't he? Just look at the state of him." "Violence makes violence," said the top Millicent, in a very holy type of gallows. "He resisted his lawful arresters." "End of the line, yes," said P.R. Daltoid again. He looked at me with very cold glasses, like I had become a thing, and was no more a bleeding, very tired, battered Chelovek. "I suppose I'll have to be in court tomorrow." "It wasn't me, brother, sir," I said, a melanky bit weepy. "Speak up for me, sir, for I'm not so bad. I was led on by the treachery of the others, sir." "Sings like a linnet," said the top Roz, sneery. "Sings the roof off lovely, he does that." "I'll speak," said cold P.R. Daltoid. "I'll be there tomorrow, don't worry." "If you'd like to give him a bash in the chops, sir," said the top Millicent, "don't mind us. We'll hold him down. He must be another great disappointment to you." P.R. Deltoid then did something I never thought any man You funny sods. Take it. Take the lot. I'm not going to crawl around on my Brugo anymore. You mercy baguettes. Where do you want it taking from, you galley-funning animals? From my last corrective. Harder show. Here it is then. So, I gave it to them, and I had this shorthand Millicent, a very quiet and scared type of Jelovec, no real raws at all, covering page after page after page after. I gave them the ultra-violence, the crasting, the trusting, the old in-out, the lot, right up to this night's fest with the buggety story tista, with the mewing cots and koshkas, and I made sure my so-called droogs were in it, right up to the Shire. When I got through the lot, the shorthand Millicent looked a bit faint. Poor old Vec. The top Ross said to him, in a kind type coloss, "Right, son, you go off and get a nice cup of chai for yourself, and then type all that filth and rottenness out with a clothes peg on your nose. 3 copies. Then they can be brought to our handsome young friend here for signature. And you," he said to me, "can now be shown to your bridal suite with running water and all conveniences. All right." In this weary coloss to 2 of the real tough roses. Take him away. So I was kicked and punched and bullied off to the cells and put in with about 10 or 12 other plennies, a lot of them drunk. There were real Usasnes, animal type Vex among them. One with his nose all ate away and its rot open like a big black hole. One that was lying on the floor snoring away, and all like slime, dribbling all the time out of his rot. And one that had like done all gal in his pantalones. Then there were like 2 queer ones who both took a fancy to me, and one of them made a jump onto my back, and I had a real nasty bit of drasting with him and the Von on him, like of meth and cheap sand. Made me want to sick again, only my belly was empty now. Oh, my brothers. Then the other queer one started putting his rookers on to me, and then there was a snarling bit of threatening between these 2, both of them wanting to get at my plot. The shoom became very loud, so that a couple of Millicents came along and cracked into these 2 with like truncheons, so that both sat quiet then, looking like into space, and there was the old Grovey going drip, drip, drip down the litso of one of them. There were bunks in this cell, but all filled. I climbed up to the top one of one tier of bunks, there being 4 in a tier, and there was a starry, drunken Vec snoring away, Lord's Litzo playing away on a like flute. And then there rose like the sun Ludwig van himself, with thundery Litzo, and cravat, and wild windy volos. And then I heard the ninth, last movement, with the Slovos, all a bit mixed up, like they knew themselves they had to be mixed up, this being a dream. Boy, thou uproarious, shark of heaven, slaughter of Elysium, hearts on fire, aroused, enraptured, we will doll-shock you on the rot and kick, you krasny funny bum. But the tune was right, as I knew when I was being woke up 2 or 10 minutes, or 20 hours, or days, or years later, my watch having been taken away. There was a Millicent, like miles and miles down below, and he was prodding at me with a long stick with a spike on the end, saying, "Wake up, son. Wake up, my beauty. Wake to real trouble." I said, "Why? Who? Where? What is it?" And the tune of the Joy Ode in the ninth was singing away, real lovely and horror show within. The Millicent said, "Come down and find out. There's some real lovely news for you, my son." So I scrambled down, very stiff and sore, and not like real awake, and this Roz, who had a strong fawn of cheese and onions on him, pushed me out of the filthy snoring cell, and then along corridors, and all the time the old tune, "Joy, thou glorious spark of heaven," was sparking away within. Then we came to a very neat like cantora, with typewriters and flowers on the desks, and at the like chief desk the top Millicent was sitting, looking very serious, and fixing a like very cold glassy on my sleepy Litzo. I said, well, what makes Bratty? What gives this fine, bright middle of the notchy? He said, "I'll give you just 10 seconds to wipe that stupid grin off of your face. Then I want you to listen." "Well, what?" I said, smacking. "Are you not satisfied with beating me near to death, and having me spat upon, and making me confess to crimes for hours on end, and then shoving me among bazoomies and funny perverts, and in that Krasny cell? Have you some new torture for me, you Brechny?" "It'll be your own torture," he said, serious. "I hope to God it'll torture you to madness." And then, before he told me, I knew what it was. The old Tidsta, who had all the cots and koshkas, had passed on to a better world in one of the city hospitals. I'd cracked her a bit too hard like. Well, that was everything. I thought of all those cots and koshkas, meowing for Moloko, and getting none, not any more, from their story, Forella of a mistress. That was everything. I'd done the lot now, and me still only 15. Part 2, Chapter 1. What's it going to be then, eh? I take it up now, and this is the real weepy and like tragic part of the story beginning. My brothers and only friends in Stasia State Jail, that is, number 84F. You will have little desire to slushy all the collie and horrible rascas of the shock in a very solemn way, and then guilty, and my mum boo-hoo-hooing when they said 14 years. Oh, my brothers. So, here I was now, 2 years just to the day of being kicked and clanged into Staja 84F, dressed in the height of prison fashion, which was a one-piece suit of a very filthy cal colour, and the number sewn on the gritty part just above the old TikToker, and on the back as well, so that going and coming I was 6655321, and not your little droog, Alex, not no longer. What's it going to be then, eh? It's not been edifying. Indeed, it had not. Being in this Krasny hellhole and human zoo for 2 years, being kicked and toe-chocked by brutal bully warders and meeting funny, leering criminals, some of them real perverts, and ready to dribble all over a luscious young malchick like your storyteller. And there was having to rabbit in the workshop to making matchboxes and itty round and round and round the yard for exercise, and in the evenings sometimes some starry prof type Vec would give a talk on beetles or the Milky Way or the glorious wonders of the snowflake, and I had a good smack at this last one because it reminded me of that time of the toll jogging and sheer vandalism, with that dead coming from the public biblio on a winter's night when my droogs were still not traitors, and I was happy and free. Of those droogs I had slooshied but one thing, and that was one day when my P and M came to visit, and I was told that Georgie was dead. Yes, dead, my brothers. Dead as a bit of dog cow on the road. Georgie had led the other two into a very rich Chelovex house, and there they had kicked and toe-chocked the owner on the floor, and that Georgie had started to raz the cushions and curtains, and then old Tim had cracked at some very precious ornaments like statues and so on, and this rich beat-up Chelovec had raged like real Bazoomi and gone for them all with a very heavy iron bar. His being all raz had given him some gigantic strength, and Tim and Pete had got out through the window, but Georgie had tripped on the carpet and then brought this terrific swinging iron bar and splooge on the Gulliver, and that was the end of traitorous Georgie. The starry murderer had got off with self-defence, as was really right and proper. Georgie being killed, though it was more than 1 year after me being caught by the Millicents. It all seemed right and proper and like fate. What's it going to be then, eh? I was in the wing chapel, it being Sunday morning, and the prison Charlie was eating the word of the Lord. It was my rabbit to play the starry stereo, putting on solemn music before and after and in the middle too when hymns were sung. I was at the back of the wing chapel. There were 4 along here in Straja 84F, near where the warders or chasos were standing with their rifles and their dirty, blotchy, blue, brutal jowls, sort of a fawn, and I was thinking that perhaps I had this fawn too, having become a real penny myself, though still very young. So it was very important to me, oh my brothers, to get out of this stinking Grasny Zoo as soon as I could. And, as you will pity, if you keep reading on, it was not long before I did. What's it going to be then, eh? Said the prison Charlie, for the third raz. Is it going to be in and out of institutions like this, though more in than out for most of you? Or are you going to attend to the divine word and realize the punishments that await the unrepentant sinner in the next world as well as in this? A lot of blasted idiots you are, most of you, selling your birthright for a saucer of cold porridge. The thrill of theft, of violence, the urge to live easy. Is it worth it when we have undeniable proof? Yes, yes, incontrovertible evidence that hell exists. I know, my friends, I have been informed in visions that there is a place darker than any prison, hotter than any flame of human fire, where souls of unrepentant criminal sinners like yourselves. And don't leer at me, damn you. Don't laugh. Like yourselves, I say, scream in endless and intolerable agony, their noses choked with the smell of filth, their mouths crammed with burning ordure, their skin peeling and rotting, a fireball spinning in their screaming guts. Yes, 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 I know. At this point, brothers, a plenty, somewhere or other near the back row, let out a shoom of lip music, and then the brutal chaos run their job right away, rushing real scurry to what they thought was the scene of the shoom, then hitting out nasty and delivering toe jocks left and right. Then they picked out one poor, trembling plenty, very thin and malanky and starry too, and dragged him off. But all the time he kept screeching. It wasn't me, it was him, see? But that made no difference. He was toe chocked, real nasty, and then dragged out of the wing chapel, screeching his Gulliver off. Now, said the prison Charlie, listen to the word of the Lord. Then he picked up the big book and flipped over the pages, keeping on wetting his fingers to do this by licking them splurge, splurge. He was a bolshy, great, burly bastard with a very red litso, but he was very fond of myself, me being young, and also now very interested in the big book. It had been arranged as part of my further education to read in the book and even have music on the chapel stereo while I was reading. Oh, my brothers, that was real horror show. They would lock me in and let me slooshy holy music by J.S. Bach and G.F. Handel, and I would read of these starry Yehudis toe-chucking each other and then beating their Hebrew vino and getting on to the bed with their wives like handmaidens. Real horror show. That kept me going, brothers. I didn't so much go at the later part of the book, which is more like all preachy, gover-eating than fighting the old in-out. But one day, the Charles said to me, squeezing me tight with his bolshy, beefy Ruger, 6655 321 and then I let the simple music, for organ only, come belting out with a growl, wow, wow, wow. Then the Blennies started to sing, real horrible. Weak tea or we, new brewed, but stirring make all strong. We eat no angel's food, our times of trial are long. They sort of howled and wept, these stupid Slovos, with the Charlie like whipping them on, with louder, damn you, sing up. And the warders screeching, just you wait, 77492222, and one on the turnip coming up for you, filth. Then it was all over, and the Charlie said, may the Holy Trinity keep you always, and make you good. Amen. And the shamble out began to a nice choice bit of Symphony No. 2 by Adrian Schwalzweiger, chosen by your humble narrator. Oh, my brothers. What a lot they were, I thought, as I stood there by the starry chapel stereo, pitying them all shuffle out, going mare and ba like animals, and up your piping with their grasny fingers at me, because it looked like I was very special favoured. When the last one had slouched out, his rookers hanging like an ape, and one warder left, giving him a fair loud toll-chuck on the back of the Gulliver, and when I had turned off the stereo, the Charlie came up to me, puffing away at a cancer, still in his starry bogman's platties, all lacy and white like a devotchka's. He said, thank you as always, little 6655321. And what news have you got for me today? The idea was, I knew, that this Charlie was after becoming a very great holy Chelovek in the world of prison religion, and he wanted a real horror show testimonial from the governor. So he would go and go for it quietly to the governor now and then about what dark plots were brewing among the Blennies, and he would get a lot of this cal from me. A lot of it would be like made up, but some of it would be true, like, for instance, the time it had come through to our cell on the water pipes. Knock, knock, knocky, knocky, knock, knocky, knock. That big hairy man was going to break. He was going to toe-chock the warder at slop time and get out in the warder's platties. Then there was going to be a big throwing about of the horrible pistia we got in the dining hall, and I knew about that and told. Then the Charlie passed it on and was complimented, like by the governor, for his public spirit and keen ear. So this time I said, and this was not true. Well, sir, it has come through on the pipes that a consignment of cocaine has arrived by irregular means, and that a cell somewhere along Tier 5 is to be the centre of distribution. I made all that up as I went along, like I made up so many of these stories, but the prison Charlie was very grateful, saying, good, good, good. I shall pass that on to himself, this being what he called the governor. Then I said, sir, I have done my best, have I not? I always used my very polite gentleman's galas, go for eating with those at the top. I've tried, sir, haven't I? I think, said the Charlie, that on the whole you have 6655321. You've been very helpful, and I consider shown a genuine desire to reform. You will, if you continue in this manner, earn your remission with no trouble at all. But sir, I said, how about this new thing they're talking about? How about this new, treatment that gets you out of prison in no time at all, neighbours talk, as it might be, and somebody can't help hearing what they say. And then somebody picks up a scrap of newspaper in the workshops, and the newspaper says all about it. How about you putting me in for this thing, sir, if I may make so bold as to make the suggestion? You could pity him thinking about that while he puffed away at his cancer, wondering how much to say to me about what he knew about this vest I'd mentioned. Then he said, "I take it you're referring to Ludovic's technique." He was still very wary. "I don't know what it's called, sir," I said. "All I know is that it gets you out quickly and makes sure that you don't get in again." "That is so," he said, his eyebrows like all beetling, while he looked down at me. "That is quite so. 6655321. Of course, it's only in the experimental stage at the moment. It's very simple, but very drastic." "But it's being used here, isn't it, sir?" I said. "Those new, like white buildings by the South Wall, sir. We've watched those being built, sir, when we've been doing our exercise." "It's not been used yet," he said. "Not in this prison, 6655321. Himself has grave doubts about it. I must confess, I share those doubts. The question is whether such technique can really make a man good. Goodness comes from within, 6655321. Goodness is something chosen. When a man cannot choose, he ceases to be a man. He would have gone on with a lot more of this, Cal, but we could slushy the next lot of plennies, marching clank, clank, down the iron stairs to come for their bit of religion." He said, "We'll have a little chat about this some other time. Now, you'd better start the voluntary." So I went over to the Starry Stereo and put on J.S. Bach's Vajet of Choral Prelude in this Krasny funny bastard criminals and perverts came shambling like a lot of broken down apes, the warders and Chaso's leg, barking at them and lashing them, and soon the prison Charlie was asking them, "What's it going to be then, eh?" And that's where you came in. We had 4 of these lumticks of like prison religion that morning, but the Charles said no more to me about this Ludovic's technique, whatever it was. Oh, my brothers. When I'd finished my rabbit with the stereo, he just corroborated a few salvos of thanks, and then I was privated back to the cell on tier 6, which was my very funny and crammed home. The Chaso was not really too bad of a Beck, and he did not tall-chalk or kick me in when he'd opened up. He just said, "Here we are, sonny, back to the old water hole." And there I was, with new type droogs, all very criminal, but, bog be praised, not given to perversions of the body. There was so far in his bunk a very thin and brown Veck who went on and on and on in his like cancery gloss, so that nobody bothered to slushy. What he was saying now, like to nobody, was, Jew, a very fast, sweaty Vic, lying flat on his bunk, like dead. In addition, there was Joe John and the doctor. Joe John was very mean and keen and wiry and had specialised in sexual assault, and the doctor had pretended to be able to cure Sif and Gon and Gleet, but he had only injected water. Also, he had killed off 2 Devochkas instead, like he had promised, of getting rid of their unwanted loads for them. They were a terrible, Krasny lot, really, and I didn't enjoy being with them, oh my brothers, any more than you do now. But it won't be for much longer. Now, what I want you to know is that this cell was intended for only 3 when it was built, but there were 6 of us there, all jammed together, sweaty and tight, and that was the state of all the cells in all the prisons in those days, brothers, and a dirty galley disgrace it was, there not being decent room for a Chelovek to stretch his limbs. And you will hardly believe what I say now, which is that on this Sunday they prostrated in another plenty. Yes, we had had our horrible pishcha of dumplings and funny stew, and were smoking a quiet cancer each on our bunks when this Vec was thrown into our midst. He was a chinny, starry Vec, and it was him who started